Today, I'm going to chat with the founder of ConvertKit, Nathan Barry. We're going to talk email marketing and also going to find out how the heck did he build his company, coming up right now on the Rise to the Top. Alrighty, and welcome, my friends. It's your great and good friend, David Siteman Garland. How are you? I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Very excited today. Going to be bringing on a special guest, and that is Nathan Barry. Now, this is going to be a very interesting conversation. We're going to talk about two things, but let me give you a little bit of context why I'm chatting with Nathan and what I'm hoping you're going to get out of it as well. So really, when I bring on people for interviews, there's going to be different types of interviews on the Rise to the Top podcast, which you've probably seen already between our last episodes. And what is this episode? This is episode number 6. So you can check out the show notes at therisetop.com/episode 6 with the number 6. But if you've seen from the last couple of guests, like Nick Stevenson, who was episode 4, and Selena Sue, episode 5, what they did is they came on and kind of taught an expertise. Nick taught about ebooks and things like that. Selena talked about PR. But as you know, and any classic fan of the Rise to Top, the old school podcast knows, one of my favorite things to do is bring on successful people and have them tell their story. And not just, what their business is and all that kind of stuff, but everything, what are their motivations, the story behind their business, what worked, what didn't work, what were some of their big marketing wins and key decisions, and what were failures and losses, and hear about these stories, because as an entrepreneur, I don't care what industry you're in. I'm sure most people that listen to the Rise to Top podcast are in what I call a personal brand, right? So you're a course creator or an expert or a coach or consultant or something like that. But it's also really cool to hear stories outside of those industries as well, so you can pick up pieces for your business, which I know you will from this interview with Nathan. So Nathan is the founder of ConvertKit, and ConvertKit is an email marketing software. So, a way that you can send out your emails. Really cool service that was actually brought to me. Nathan was brought to me as a friend a couple of years ago by Pat Flynn, who is on the advisory board of ConvertKit. He said, David, you and Nathan are very much aligned. You got a lot of cool stuff going on. Why don't you guys chat? We ended up doing a webinar about email marketing that was spectacular. I believe we did that last year. And, our relationship has grown with ConvertKit as well. And what was interesting is I sat down in December. I'm not a big fan of meetings. I don't know about you. I am just not a meetings person. Just don't do it. I avoid them like the plague. I've got systems for that. Maybe I'll talk about that in an upcoming episode. We'll talk about how I avoid meetings. But one of the very few meetings I did in 2017 was with Alexis, who is on the ConvertKit team. And we grabbed coffee here in St. Louis. She happened to be in town. She kind of lives in Illinois, so she was coming in. And we had a great chat about ConvertKit and the story behind it and Nathan and all these different things. I said, you know what? When my podcast comes back in 2018, we have got to get Nathan on the show. And here's one of the big reasons is that we're going to get into this in the interview, but it's really more of a conversation than an interview, of course. But what I love is that Nathan took a company from scratch to now, and this was a milestone that was just reached. They're doing over $1 million in sales a month in a very crowded space. Email marketing is a very crowded space. So we're going to talk about how the heck did he go from scratch to $1 million a month in recurring revenue, right? With ConvertKit in this interview. There's great stories that come up. There's great challenges. There's times where he almost shut it down and how he persevered. There's great things that you can apply to your business and your life. We're also going to talk about email marketing as well. There's a ginormous myth going around. Spoiler alert. It is 100% not true. People are saying email marketing's dead or dying, okay? We're going to talk about that as well, because that is 100% false. We're going to get into that. And also at the very end, we've got some great resources for you, including an upcoming live webinar with a really killer member of Nathan's team. So, all right, without further ado, before I ramble on and on and on, let's get to this uncensored, uncut conversation with Nathan Barry. All right, well, now I'm going to be joined by the one, the only, the Nathan Barry himself. Hello, Nathan. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
And by the way, where are you coming at us from? I meant to go look at this. I know you could be anywhere, but where are you? I have a feeling, but where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Boise, Idaho. So we have a little homestead here. So 5 acres, lots of animals, all of that. And then I've got my home office just, building a software empire from a mini farm.
I gotta love it. And by the way, I was just thinking this, we have a ton to talk about today, but I thought something that was very interesting is that I had, and I mentioned this in the introduction, but I had coffee with Alexis from your team. And it was funny because I always assumed, and again, this is just me not knowing anything as usual. I assumed that you guys had some big office with ping pong tables and, I don't know, chefs and whoever knows what's going on, but you were actually 100% virtual.
Yeah, we're a team of 34 people now. Woo. There's 7 of us here in Boise, but we got some drinks last week because a few people were in town. But that's the kind of thing like once a month we're like, hey, you guys want to get breakfast? You want to go get drinks? It's that kind of thing. We don't actually get together very often. And then everyone else is spread around the US, and we've got, I think, 6 people on the team internationally. So
I love it.
Mostly in Europe.
I love it. That's kind of the new reality today. I know it's funny because a lot of people don't know this, but my partner in my software company, so in the Course Cats and Conversion Cats and Author Cats, Brad Hogan, who goes way back with me, we have never met. Is that insane? We've been in business together for years and years and years. He worked on one of the original versions of my website back in like 2009, 2010. He's from St. Louis. He doesn't live in St. Louis. He's from St. Louis. We have mutual friends that we've hung out with separately, but we have never hung out with each other, which is insane. But anyway, I digress.
So hold on. At what point does this become a thing where you can't meet in person?
I think we've already crossed the line almost.
Like 6 or 7 years in, you're like, now we just got to keep this going for 20 years. We can't ever meet.
Right. We could have like a 20-year anniversary meeting or something. That's what I'm thinking. I think now we can't mess it up, So anyway, back to the point at hand here. We're going to really dissect into ConvertKit. And we were just talking actually before we started recording this podcast that you guys do something really interesting is that you actually in public have all your numbers. And I'll link that up. It's convertkit.bearmetrics.com. And Bearmetrics is this cool website. We can see people's numbers and how people are doing with their software companies. But you just hit a very important milestone, which I know you guys are ecstatic about. Can you tell us about that? Because this number just blew my mind when I heard it.
Yeah. So on Sunday this week, 2 days ago, we just crossed $1 million in monthly recurring revenue. So we're insanely happy about it. It's been a long time coming. Yeah, it's just really, really fun.
And that, by the way, for those that are kind of, we do a lot of interviews with personal brands and we talk about, launches and list building and online courses and different stuff like that. So talking today about software, it's a little bit of a different world. So for those that don't know, MRR, just like Nathan said, is monthly recurring revenue. So that's basically your every month who's paying you because people are on subscriptions with ConvertKit. And now we're in 2018. We're shooting this interview in 2018, Nathan. When did ConvertKit first start? Officially, if you will.
ConvertKit officially started January 1st, 2013. So 5 years and 2.5 months ago. Okay.
Which, by the way, I don't know why I was expecting you to be like 2006. No, I don't know why. To me, that's not crazy amount of time to get to now, let's call it $12 million. I know it's monthly, but $12 million for the sake of argument, and now 34 people. And that's incredible growth. So I think a great place to start with this. First of all, could you just explain in your own words? I always love to hear this from the founder. What is ConvertKit?
Yeah, ConvertKit's an email marketing platform for creators. So if you're out there writing a blog, running a podcast, any of those things, and you want to grow your audience online, and you need a way to reach them directly through email, then that's what you use ConvertKit for. So you could think of it another way if you know other tools in the space of like Power of Infusionsoft, but easier to use than MailChimp.
Got it. Okay, perfect. I love that's funny because that's going to lead to one of my questions in a bit about competition and things like that. But it's so 2013, you start the company. Where did the idea come from? Where did you come up with this, and why did you decide to enter the space?
Yeah, so I was running a blog of my own teaching people how to design software. And so I wrote books about, how to design iPhone apps and how to design web apps. And as I launched these books, I built a little email list on MailChimp. And I remember the first book launch I did was to a list of 798 people.
Nice.
Nice. Give or take 0. It was a very precise number. But did this book launch and it did way better than I ever expected. Like my goal for this launch was to do $10,000 in the entire lifetime of the book. Because I was thinking, okay, I'll make money through consulting or these other things, but if I could make some money off the book, that'd be great. $10,000 over the next couple of years would be amazing. And it did $12,000 in the first 24 hours. And I was like, okay, first of all, there's something to this blogging thing. But then also I was like, wait a second, all these sales came from the email list. I was like building up the social channel, I was doing everything on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And it was the email list that drove all the sales. And I went to a friend of mine who had been doing online marketing, since back in the day when you could buy clicks on Google for like 5 cents each. And I was like, hey, Ron, like this email marketing thing, like it's converting better than all the other channels combined. And he just like looks at me and goes, yeah, we've known that since like 2001. It hasn't changed. And I was like, okay, I'm a little late to the party, but I just dove all in and I was like, okay, let's learn everything there is to know about email marketing and all the best practices. Did another book launch, did twice as well to a bigger list. And then what I ran into was I'd learn all these best practices and I'd go to implement them in MailChimp. And I just felt like I was having to fight with the tool and having to hack around the way they built things. And that's when I realized like, oh, it wasn't built for bloggers. It wasn't built for an online creator like me. It was built for like all of small business. Mm-hmm. And I was not running a generic small business. I had very specific needs.
And that's a broad spectrum right there. That could be anything from a mom and pop bakery to a tech blog.
Oh, totally. And, and everything in between. And so coming to it from that world, I was like, wait, you guys probably don't know what content upgrades are. And here I am trying to improve the conversion rate at the end of one of my blog posts by having a super specific opt-in, all this stuff. And I was like, no one gave any thought to how I would do that inside of MailChimp because, that's one tiny little segment of their market that cares about that. And so there are these other things, tagging subscribers. I realized that everything they were doing was recommending that I'd create more lists. And then they were charging me, for every duplicate subscriber that was on each list. And I was like, wait a second, you told me to do this. And now my bill is double, and I was like, oh, I see how this works. And so there's just a bunch of things where I was like, okay, I can make a tool that's built for people like me who are trying to grow an audience online, sell digital products to them, and go from there. And then I can just build those best practices in by default. So that was the original idea. It wasn't exactly the smoothest ride all the way along, but that's where we started.
And that's right. We're going to cover that ride, all the bumps and shenanigans here today too, and also talk email marketing as well, because we get the dual-edged sword here today, because we've got not only an interesting story about your business, Nathan, but we also have an interesting subject matter that your business covers, which is email marketing. We've got the double. We don't have that all the time on the Rise Stop podcast. We've got the unicorn. So let's talk about this. But when you started the company, obviously that took, forthright and chutzpah, as we call it, to do this. But a couple questions. One, were you working anywhere right then, or is it you just making money off the blog, or what were you doing? Just curious, because that's always interesting when someone's starting. Did you have another job, or what were you doing at the time?
Yeah, so I was about a year out, maybe a year and a half out from quitting my last job. I worked leading the design team at a software company here in Boise. And over that year, I had gradually transitioned from freelancing, and then like the previous 3 months I'd published these 2 books, and then I was all in on digital products at that point. So yeah, I was kind of doing all 3 at the same time, of running a couple of books and then starting the software company.
Got it. So also, it's funny because sometimes we don't even think about these things. I know when I've started businesses and things like that, I really could care less about the competition to a certain degree, meaning I care and I don't care, when it comes to that. When you started that, I mean, that was a big move to say, you know what, I'm going to create an email marketing system and way to do this better than people like MailChimp, which probably have, 1,000 million people there. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but at least perception wise, and
about 800 or 900.
Yeah, sure. There, I rounded up. A few other types of email services that are all out there, Infusionsoft, there's all these different ones. Why did you kind of have the confidence to say, you know what, I can do something and jump into the space? And I don't know, were you worried about that?
I was definitely worried about it, especially because you and I could sit here and rattle off, I don't know, if we made a list, probably 10 or 20 email marketing companies that make over $10, $20 million a year. Like there's a lot of them out there. It's a super competitive space. But what I realized pretty early on is that I didn't have to build a better email product than MailChimp. I had to build a better email product for this exact set of people.
For the niche.
And that I could do. Yeah, exactly. And, for all of small business, like, can't do it. They've got all this money, all these resources. They've got, I've got one contract developer. They have 300 full-time developers. It's like, how do you compete with that? But the way you compete with it is that you get super specific about who you're going to serve, and then listen to them. And it really helps when you're able to address that as your own problem. And, the scratching your own itch idea of, hey, I actually know I've done these product launches. I know what converts on websites. I know how to write these email campaigns. And so I'm building what I need. And there will be other people who need that as well. And there'll be plenty of people who come along and say, hey, can I do this? No. And they're like, well, if you build that, I'll sign up. And I'm like, look, that's not a direction we're ever going to go. Go use another tool because we're not going to serve your plumbing business or whatever else.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly the same advice I give to people with online courses. It's no different, right? Is getting specific in terms of your audience. And that's also a way that you compete with really big people. So for example, if I was going to do a course, instead of doing a course on podcasting, let's say, you could do a course on podcasting for dentists to generate leads, right? Because the more niche you get, the better. That's exactly what you did. You did a niche software product and found that specific groove. But the key question, and you see these people all the time, they've got these great ideas. And, and also some people can execute on those ideas, right? We get fewer, lots of people with good ideas, fewer people that execute, and then even fewer that then bring it to market and get customers. And so I'd love to hear, how did you get your first customers for ConvertKit?
Yeah. So ConvertKit kind of has two waves, but we'll talk about the first wave because I think there's a lot of good things to learn from it. And the first was when I did this whole project, and being a blogger, I said, okay, not only am I going to build this software product, but I'm going to build the whole thing in public. And so I started this thing called the Web App Challenge, and where I was like, hey, I'm going to set goals for myself and then blog the whole thing every week so you can follow along, which, by the way, it really helps to have that public accountability. And if you put it out there and say, hey, I'm going to do this, in this case, what I said was, I'm going to build this to $5,000 in monthly recurring revenue within 6 months. There were a bunch of really smart, talented people who came alongside and were like, great, if you need any help or advice, happy to jump on a call. And I was like, seriously? If you go back to those original comments, it's people like Heaton Shaw who founded Kissmetrics and Crazy Egg.
Oh, it's a great, that's a very successful, nice company. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Or like David Hauser who founded Grasshopper and later sold that to Citrix for, however many 100 million. There's comments from those people saying, cool, if you need anything, we'd love to help you out, because of putting out a public goal and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing and going there. So that's what I did. I said, trying to get to $5,000 a month within 6 months. The other thing is I had this money coming off of these ebook launches, and I'd watched people waste it on development before, where they'd say, for whatever reason, from this other business, I've got all this money. Recurring revenue sounds amazing. Let's dive into it. So I'm going to drop $100,000 to build out the perfect product. And then they end up launching it and no one wants to buy it. Ugh. And you're at that $100,000.
Yep.
And that really sucks. And I did not want that to happen to me. So I put in this restriction that, and in hindsight, it was a foolishly low amount of money. But I said, hey, I'm going to only put out $5,000 of my own money. It does help that I know how to design and code so that, I could put in my own time there, but that everything else, all the money we needed for servers, for development, et cetera, would come from customers.
Okay. So that's funny because that was one of my questions. The whole thing was bootstrapped then. You didn't actually bring in any VC money or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all come from my pocketbook and our customers. So what happened was, by only putting in that 5,000, I had to start selling right away. So I put together a pre-order package where it was like, hey, pre-order this, you'll get, I think I was charging people for 3 months up front and then giving them, hey, you get 20% off for the lifetime of your account. You get some other perks, all this stuff. And I sold a bunch of pre-orders, talked to people. It got me out talking to customers right away. And that was really important because I needed to get money from customers in order to continue development.
Right, because otherwise you couldn't do this. You couldn't do this model that I'm not a fan of, which is the freemium, or hey, it's going to be free for this long period of time. We'll burn through all our money and have to sell our house and children, and then maybe hopefully one day we'll get it back. So because you lit a fire under your own butt, and you said, you know what, this is my maximum cutting in. I have to sell.
Yeah, and what happens is you get to these real conversations, and I made the mistake early on of having these conversations and saying, like, hey, what are your frustrations with the email? Talking through it, getting some great feedback. And then I'd say, okay, if I built a tool to solve this, would you buy it? People would go, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I'm like, great. How much did you pay for it? And they'd be like, oh, $50 a month, $250 a month. Like, it all depended on the business. And then, I'd say, great. I don't have a way for you to pay for it right now, but like I'll come back in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
What was interesting is whenever that happens, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs have those conversations where they're like, great, 5 people just told me they're going to buy it. And then they think that that's like a verbal contract. And the other person is like,
it seems so hypothetical to me.
yeah. And so what happens is when you go back, and what happened to me when I went back to those people and said, great, here's where you pre-order, they were like, okay, cool. So what about this? What about that? How are you going to send mass emails? What's the migration process? Like the real questions came out when money was actually on the line.
Oh,
before they were thinking in hypotheticals. They were like, in a world where Nathan creates this software, and if it's everything that I ever need and want it to be, then like, of course, I would totally switch. Whereas I was thinking in concrete terms. And so once you say, hey, David, will you hand over your credit card? Then it switches from hypothetical to like real. And you get into the feedback of like, okay, how much work is it actually to switch? Do you have this functionality yet? Because I can't switch till you have that. And so I think you have to ask for money absolutely as early as possible. Because otherwise, yeah, someone might be using your product for free for a long time, like you talked about, and they're not giving you the real feedback because they're not actually a customer yet. So get that money up front and you'll do a lot better.
Or it seems that you'll be sitting there talking about hypotheticals the rest of your life, right? Like saying that this person thought this should be built before they want to buy it, but until the credit card's actually out, it might be a completely different set of issues or a different thing. So that was a key point. So, and by the way, I was thinking about this when you mentioned some of those big names that saw you when you were kind of building this in public to help get to that first kind of 5K in revenue. So would you say the blog was your biggest driver to that first 5K?
Yeah, so we actually didn't hit the 5K, which is an interesting part of it. So I ran these pre-orders, got maybe, I have to look at the original post, maybe 25 people to pre-order. We built the product within 6 months. We had a basic version of the product. It worked. You could collect email addresses. You could send them out. You had, there were the email sequences. So emails would drip out over time, all of that. And we got to about 2,200 a month in recurring revenue. So, it was almost half. And it's not like I was horribly upset. I was like, oh, screw this. I'm shutting it down and going home. Because like really in 6 months, getting to 2,200 a month in recurring revenue, totally from scratch, I was like, hey, that's good. This revenue is recurring. We can just build up from there. But it still wasn't what I had hoped it to be.
Right. Well, that makes sense. And what was then the second wave? So the first wave, I'm assuming, like you said, it was kind of people that knew you, they had followed you, people that probably stumbled upon you for whatever reason. So that was your first wave. How did it grow from there? Because what I'm really getting at here is I want to hear, well, let's get there. What's kind of that second wave?
Yeah. So the second wave, I figured we'd hit 2,200 a month in revenue. Then the month after that would be 2,400, and we just kind of slowly work our way up, And that's not at all what happened. Basically, we hit that 2,200 a month in revenue. The things I was doing to continue selling it weren't working. The product needed a lot more functionality for bigger accounts to switch over. And it basically spent the next year in this kind of awkward limbo of revenue just bounced around. People signed up, other people canceled. We basically stayed at the same level and gradually declined. And then I had this conversation. It would have been about a year and a half into running ConvertKit. I was at a conference and I was talking to Heaton Shaw, who I mentioned earlier. And we were walking back from dinner one night of the event, and he just said, I've been thinking about it, and you should shut down ConvertKit. I was like, wait, what? And he goes, yeah. You've been successful selling books. You've got your blog. You're a capable guy. You'll be successful at other things. At this point, you're a year and a half into ConvertKit. It's doing, I don't know, $1,500 a month in revenue. You're down even from that peak. And it's not working. Just shut it down and move on. That's totally fine. There's no shame in that.
Wow. So, I mean, yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, that has to be a huge, you weren't expecting that coming at you.
Not at all.
And I was just curious, how did you react and what happened?
Well, we're walking along and he stopped to say that, to kind of punctuate the point. And then after he says it, he just starts walking again. And so I'm like standing there like, what? Like this guy that I really respect is just like, yeah, you should shut it down. It's time to call it,
I gotta go to the bathroom. Boop, he's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I stand there for a second and then catch up with him. And then he just continues. He goes, yeah, you should shut it down, or you can take it really seriously. You can give it the time, money, and attention that it deserves and build it into something. But what you're doing right now of trying to, you've got these iPhone apps that you're selling, you've got the books, which are bringing in pretty good money. You're focusing on the blog and growing the audience there. And then you're trying to grow a software company. And let's face it, you're not doing any of these things well. And if you want ConvertKit to succeed, you've got to go all in on it.
Oh, I love it. I mean, it's got to be brutal, but it's like brutally honest in a good way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that conversation has quite literally made me millions of dollars now. But that's one of those things where I thought about that because he was just like, shut it down or double down, one or the other. Stop half-assing it. And so that really stuck with me. Though I did something that I think a lot of people do when they hear really good advice. And that's that you don't take any action on it for like 6 months.
Like you filed it away in this part of your brain, but you said, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing.
Right. And it was like, yeah, totally. You're right. That makes sense. Also, shutting down one business or like, it's a tough decision. And so you just kind of sit on it. And that was in April 2014. By October 2014, the business had declined further. We were down to $1,300 a month in revenue.
Did you think, by the way, at all thrown in the towel or anything like that at this point?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, because I
had
was
all
curious.
These conversations. Yeah, because at this point, it's losing money every month. Like I'm spending more on about $2,000 a month was the break-even point. Where like, hey, it's paying its server bills. We can fix the bugs, make a little improvements, etc.
So you're losing $700 a month there.
Yeah, and it's just like I like the product, but I couldn't really convince other people to use it, and it was just like, I don't know if this is going to work. But I had this thought in my head of really, I came up with a really simple framework. And that just ended up being 2 questions. Because I figured this is a problem that a lot of people face. Like maybe you've had a project that you jump into and it's a home run and you're just like, yeah, I started selling it from day one and then, straight line to $1 million and we're good to go from there.
Yeah, there's not too many of those.
I think most of them are like 3 months in, a year in, 2 years in. They're like, I don't know, dude. I don't know if this is going to work. And there's a lot of projects that should be killed off. So I'm not trying to make the case that you should always persevere on something. I think people have too short of a timeline in general. But, I wanted to see if I could come up with a framework for making this decision of shut it down or double down. And so I came up with 2 questions. And the first question is, do you still want this as much today as the day that you started? Because motivation changes over time. I've jumped in, I'm like, oh, I'm going to write a book about this. It's going to be so great. I'm going to write the outline. And then by halfway through the second day, I'm like,
you're like, nope, bored, move on. You're right.
Yeah. And so if that changes over a day or over 6 months, just recognize that. If you don't still want it and you have other options, call it and say, look, I don't actually want to run a software company. I'm going to stick to running, selling my ebooks and building my blog. And like, that's an amazing business. So that is entirely fine. But for me, I was like, no, I absolutely want this next challenge of a software company. I want the recurring revenue and I have an idea and I want to execute on it. And so then it's like, okay, great. Proceed to question 2. Question 2 is just, have you given this every possible chance to succeed? So with that, if you have, like if you desperately want this and you've given it every possible chance, your absolute best effort, and it's not working out, then you got to call it. For some reason, maybe you're not the right person to bring it to market. Maybe you're too early, too late. It's not a good idea. All of these things. There's something wrong with it. You gave it your best and you can walk away.
Right. And we're not talking about the first challenge here. We're talking about you've exhausted everything. You've exhausted resources. You've exhausted every marketing weapon that you could try to deploy. You've tried every, special mini pivot, whatever it might be. We're not talking about, because I don't want someone to listen to this, not that they would, and think, first sign of distress. That's it. Question 2, I'm out of here, because it's not the first sign of distress. It could be the 2000th sign of distress, but it has to be exhausted is one of the key things there that you just said.
Yeah. And it's basically you know what? I don't know what else I would do. Like I've given this everything. It's not working. And, you got to walk away. But for me, I was sitting there going, well, I actually haven't. I say I really, really want this thing. And then I'm like, yeah, but I want it like 15, 20 hours a week. And there's a big disconnect there. If there's a disconnect between how much you say you want something and the amount of effort that you're willing to put into it, then you've got to realize that there's something hypocritical about that and you got to own up to it. And so for me, I realized that if I shut down ConvertKit that day and walked away, I would always wonder if I could have made it work. And that was something that I wasn't willing to live with. And so I realized, okay, I have to double down on it. I have to go all in on ConvertKit. And if it totally fails within 6 months, we haven't made any progress, then great. I will walk away knowing that I actually did give it my best. But I'm certainly not going to walk away knowing that I'd half-assed it.
I love it. I mean, and by the way, a question on, I was going to say, question 1. And I'm just curious about this because everyone's very different with this, is the motivation, right? What's your motivation? And maybe it's changed a little bit, maybe it hasn't, but what really is your motivation here with this company for you personally?
Yeah, I think it's changed over time. I also think that if you can truly figure out what your motivation is, you're in a really good spot. So I think it's a long-term process to figure out, okay, I say I'm motivated by this, but like what actually is it? Initially, I think it's gone through 3 phases. The first one was like learning in a new challenge where I didn't feel challenged anymore by running my book and course business.
Got it. So you want to scale the mountain, if you will, try something new and challenging and difficult.
Yep. I wanted to try running a team, all of that. I think probably that over time transitioned into like being motivated by the income side of it.
For sure. And it should be. And I think people get nervous even admitting that.
Right.
And we should understand as entrepreneurs that is a major priority and you should be excited about that. I mean, money is life changing. I mean, sorry, that was like an epic rant out of like one word that came out of your mouth, but you could tell me that was a hot button because I feel like people are scared to say that and they start saying things they don't really mean. And I'm glad that should always be there. That should be there.
Yeah. And that's something that, especially as I saw it maybe later on when the growth started happening, I realized, oh, wow, this can turn into something really substantial. And I've always been motivated by the stability of recurring revenue that I know that next month, guaranteed ConvertKit will make at least $1 million. Like our worst months are when we grow by less than we wanted to. Not that we made less money than the previous month. It's that we didn't grow by as much as we expected.
That's a first world problem right there, right?
Yeah, of the most ridiculous sort. There's definitely the money side of the motivation. And then I think more recently in the last year, we've started to figure out the impact side of it. We get into that more later. But of realizing, hey, we have a platform. We changed the whole focus of the company. And around now our mission is that we exist to help creators earn a living. And so seeing that transition that I was able to have in my life and being able to take that to, at this point, it's 18,000 customers and be like, okay, if we can support people doing that, now that becomes a lot of the motivation. And I went out to my little shop in the garage and made everyone these little plaques that say, we exist to help creators earn a living. And so it sits on every person's desk in the company.
I love it. I'm really glad you shared that because I feel actually exactly the same way. And it's funny because we're very aligned with our missions, even though we do different things. We're actually very similar. We serve a very similar audience, which are content creators, experts, that personal brands, that crowd. That's exactly what is the same for me. I mean, that's the mission for what I do at the Rise Top with all my companies is to help people, take their passion and their expertise and their content and make money and make a living from it. That's what keeps me going. I love obviously the revenue side of it as well. But yes, those things combined, I think, are the kind of secret sauce of motivation, if you will. You know what I mean? Motivated by having a successful business. If you're not motivated by having a successful business, you end up giving away things for free or forgetting important things like actually building your business. I know, shocking, it happens, right? And then the other one is if you don't have that bigger kind of impact, really looking to serve and help people, number one, it's going to be short-lived. Right? Because you're going to be an opportunist. You're going to run around from different things to try to make the most money at the most time right now. And that's not going to have any longevity. And you're not going to have, loyal customers and people because it's going to it's just not going to work without that impact or what you're really trying to do. Think of that higher purpose. That was a great tidbit, Nathan. I'm sure you agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I would also say that if you don't know the exact higher purpose yet, don't stress out about it.
It's okay. It's going to come.
It'll come for sure. We struggled with, how we had this idea, but we didn't know how to phrase it. And it took a while. And now it's super simple. It's just like, yeah, we're here to help creators earn a living. And so we can put a lot of things through that framework. Like we started a conference. We're launching a documentary on Kickstarter. We're doing all these things. People are like, what? You're a software company. And we're like, no, but this helps creators earn a living. And so we do that. And so, but it took time to come. And I think there was a while where I was listening to other startups being like, this is how we're changing the world. And I was like, I feel like we're just making money. We're not changing the world. And it's like, it's okay. You'll figure it out over time.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, if you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, I teach, dogs how to do backflips and that's my content. How am I making the world a better place? I mean, there's a bigger thing there. It's not something to stress over. I think that was a very good point on that. So Nathan, kind of back to the story here too. And I know we got a lot to cover. I'm going to have a rapid fire round. We're going to talk email marketing in general too, but I'd be curious to know, what has been the key for you for growth now? Because you kind of mentioned, you decided to go all in, going back to the big conversation from the guy who then, dropped this on you. 6 months of pondering. Here we go. Obviously, you decided to go all in. Spoiler alert. What were the keys here to the growth in those months? Because I'm sure people would love, in those years even, I'm sure people would love to know. Because I mean, you're at a company now, $1,300, let's just say recurring, to today, $1 million recurring, which is even crazy saying out loud. I'm sure it is for you too. What were some of those things that you could point to in there that people I think would love to hear about?
Yeah. So right in those. What doubling down looked like, what that meant to me was 4 changes. So first, I put in real money. That $5,000 was not enough. And so I took all of my savings from the books and courses, which was $50,000, and I put that into the company. And then the next thing was hiring actual full-time employees. Where in these online businesses, we're trying to get away with doing everything with contractors or not having overhead and all of that. There's something to be said for having people who get up every day and say, hey, how can I make this product better? How can I make this company better? And that's their full focus. Someone said to me once, if you pay for half of someone's time, you get a quarter of their attention. And that just stuck with me. And I was like, great, I'm going to start paying for all of someone's time and getting all of their attention. And that made a big difference. The next 2 things, despite knowing that I was building a product for a more narrow outlet, I talked about it as like email marketing for marketers. I don't know. It was for everybody. And so I actually picked a specific niche and went into email marketing. First, it was email marketing for authors. And then about 3 or 4 months later, we pivoted that to be email marketing for professional bloggers and getting really specific. And I was so nervous about excluding people in the same way that, if you're doing a course on, like you mentioned, lead generation for dentists, you're like, oh, but won't that exclude the orthodontist?
Right.
Like,
right.
It's okay. The orthodontist will figure it out.
Exactly right. But wait, what if it's another medical professional, or like, what if it's a, I don't know, a rooster guy who wants to come in? I'm like, what? That's not your niche. But people love to try to expand, but it's staying in that narrow lane. I'm sure that was the focus that really drove you to success.
Yeah, so doing that made all the difference. And then the thing that we added on top of that that's been a core tenet throughout all of ConvertKit is doing direct sales. I'm a blogger. I like content marketing. I like writing one thing and having it reach 10,000 people, and then some magical percentage of them signing up for the product, all that stuff. I like scalable marketing. But what actually worked for us in the early days was making lists of people, making lists of professional paleo recipe bloggers who are women, and then emailing them, getting on calls, finding out what their needs are, converting them, manually migrating them from MailChimp or from Aweber over to ConvertKit, and doing all of that to get that $50 a month, and then working up from there. And that's what built the foundation for word of mouth and everything else.
Wait, so you're saying, hang on a second. You're saying that you would you'd create lists of people that you wanted to become customers. Got it. They're in a specific niche. And what, you and a few people would reach out and I would like literally just email them and say, do you want to, no one wants to switch their email service on a random cold email. So I'm just curious what that kind of looked like. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So what I would do is, I don't know how many customers we had at the time. I like 30 to 50. And I would look at some of our best customers out of that 30 to 50. And I would say, okay, how can I find more people like them? One of them was a paleo recipe blog. So I was like, great. Okay, let's find more people like that. So then I would make a list, and I'd make it in 2 ways. One would be Google searches, paleo recipe blogs, blah, 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 a bunch of different keywords. And the other thing is I would go on Twitter and follow people, and then it would give me suggestions of who else to follow. So I'd make spreadsheets based off of that. I'd find the email addresses. Then I'd reach out and the email would go something like this. It'd be like, hey, Joe, I was just wondering, is there anything in particular that's frustrating you with MailChimp or Aweber or whatever, right? I do my research and call it out specifically. The reason I ask is I run ConvertKit. It's an email marketing platform for professional bloggers used by, and I would name drop, the only relevant name that I had.
Right. The paleo person. Yeah. It's used by Paleo Pete.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually worked because they'd be like, oh, really? Paleo Pete uses you? Great. There's a little hint of recognition that comes in there. And then they would either not respond, which happens the majority of the time, or they would say, actually, these things do irritate me. I'm getting charged for duplicate subscribers. I can't do content upgrades well. I can't tag my customers. These are all really frustrating things. And I was like, oh, well, funny you bring that up. That's what frustrated me, as well. And so I try to get on a call from there and then talk through it. And then the objection that would always come up, people would say, oh, this is great.
I know it. I have a feeling I know what it is. Can I guess?
Go for it.
This all sounds great, but that's going to be a huge pain in the butt to change.
Yeah.
Oh, boom. You can hire me anytime.
Turns out moving email lists is hard and no one wants to do it. No matter how much pain they're experiencing, they're like, look, I'm just not going to go through it to switch. And so one time out of desperation, I was like, because I would try to tell people it's not that much work. You just export your import, blah, 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 switch all the forms, FTP, all this stuff. I'm like, that's not convincing. What is convincing is saying, I tell you what, I'll do it all for you for free. And people go, wait, really? And you're like, yeah. Give me your FTP access to your site. Give me access to your MailChimp login. I will switch the whole thing over and then get on a call with you afterwards and teach you how to use it. And they're like, how's that going to be profitable? I'm paying you, if I sign up, I'll be paying you $50 a month and it's going to take you 10 hours. Like the math just doesn't check out. What I didn't say is like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur with no revenue, so my time's worth like $2 an hour. I was willing to do the work to get all of that set up and to get that recurring revenue and get that going. So we actually, to this day, still do concierge migrations. We do like a dozen a week. It's a game changer because in that we're just like, hey, we'll take care of it for you. And that recurring revenue builds on itself, right? And so I was basically willing to do whatever it took to get those, $50, $100 a month accounts in those early days. And then that's what built on the word of mouth. And then later when I was emailing in the men's fashion space, and I had 2 examples there, and we could create these little mini echo chambers of feeling like everyone on the web is switching to ConvertKit, whereas in reality, it's just this tiny little group of bloggers in these little niches that all know each other.
I love it. And it's funny because, that takes you out of, when you drop that name in that email, it takes you out of spammy spammerson and makes you at least a tiny bit relevant, right? Enough for like, oh, well, I recognize, that person, which, therefore it goes from there. And so the direct sales, obviously we're a key cog here in the marketing for you guys. Now that you've scaled, obviously you have direct sales, like you said, you're still doing. Just curious from a marketing perspective, what has worked best for you to get users to ConvertKit?
Yeah, the biggest thing has been our affiliate channel.
Okay. Like me, like I'm an affiliate, like I'm a ConvertKit affiliate. We're going to have special links at the end of this podcast, and we're even doing a webinar and stuff coming up. So people like me.
Yeah, exactly. People like you, Pat Flynn, a bunch of other people. But what most people do is they turn on affiliates and then they're just like, great, we have an affiliate program. Why isn't it driving any results? You see people do this with their courses as well. They're like, yeah, I have an affiliate program for my course. And I don't know, I might even have 100 affiliates, but no one's driving any volume. And so what we really did is went back to that direct sales principle and just applied it to affiliates.
Okay.
So
because affiliates have to be handheld. It's very true.
Yeah. And it's a sales process as well, right? You have so many people competing for your time and your attention that you can give out to your audience that like there's a conversation that has to happen there. The other thing that we do is we go get on planes and we visit people in person. For when Pat Flynn signed up, started using ConvertKit, that was, I think we met twice in person in San Diego before he switched to using ConvertKit and then started promoting us. And so we applied those direct sales ideas to affiliates and then to, landing webinars and just always making lists of, okay, who are our dream partners to work with? And then let's go out and make that happen. And we're willing to not just send emails, not just get on calls, but also get on a plane and meet with them in person. Because if someone says, hey, I'm in St. Louis, I'm in San Diego, I'm in Nashville, would you be up for meeting? If you have some kind of a reputation online and you're doing good work, the answer is way more likely that someone says, yeah, if you come out here, I'd be happy to take coffee or whatever.
Right. And it's funny because I had coffee with Alexis in December here in St. Louis, but that was a little bit of the outreach. I'm just waiting for you to schlep in on your plane coming in from Boise. Do you know what I mean? But I get exactly what you're saying. I mean, so affiliates for you are a major driver. You've got your direct sales as well. Is there anything else? Just because I know people love hearing about marketing, and, it's usually not too many things that it's like a 98.2% rule usually with marketing. 2% of what you do is giving 98% of the results. Are those anything else that I'm forgetting there on that list of like what's really driving sales of ConvertKit now?
Yeah, so it's the word of mouth overall.
Yeah.
Which word of mouth is a super frustrating thing to hear, because you're like if you're struggling right now, if you're at $1,000 a month on your software product and you've been grinding it out for a while, someone's like, you ask, how'd you grow? And they're like, oh, I grew through word of mouth.
Yeah, it's like shuts computer, runs away. I got it.
Right, because what do you do with that? You're like, oh yeah, I should have just pulled the word of mouth lever. That was foolish.
Right, I should have just told people, just talk about me, please. It'd be great.
Right. I remember being super frustrated by that in the early days, because people would say that, oh, we grew from 2,000 a month to 50,000 a month in a year, all through word of mouth. And it's just like, what do you do with that? And the answer is that you get out and sell. Because by doing those direct sales, particularly in a small niche, then you can create this buzz, and then that base of accounts builds up. And if you treat them really well, then they'll start referring. But word of mouth is the byproduct of sales rather than the result of new sales. So we would always get out and sell, meet people in person, do all the work we could to move them over to ConvertKit, so that then people would say, oh yeah, what do you use for your email? And you're like, actually, I moved off of Aweber about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I use this brand new tool called ConvertKit. Super great. Maybe you should check them out, And that's where word of mouth comes in. So that drives the majority of our growth, but it all stems from the direct sales.
I got it. So it's affiliates, you got direct sales, you've got, which is those overlap with affiliates, you've got word of mouth, and I'm sure you of course still have your content marketing as well. Now, I've got this kind of I don't want to call it speed round, but speed-ish round of questions that I want to make sure that if I don't ask, I'm going to be very upset with myself later on. And that's not going to be good for anybody when I'm walking around and be like, I should have asked Nathan that. Is number one is the magic metric, like you said, that people talk about specifically in the software industry, well, other industries too, but really in software, is that monthly recurring revenue. And a term that some people might not be privy to that are not in that market is churn, which is basically what is the amount of people that don't sign up or don't retain type of thing per month. Do you guys do anything specific to minimize that type of thing? I mean, obviously, of course, you're going to still have people canceling and things like that. That's nature of the beast. But have you guys done anything specific to try to, besides obviously being an amazing product, of trying to help people stay with it?
Yeah. So we've made a bunch of changes, because throughout the whole business, we've had more people coming in who are more like a lot of people at the beginner level. We have the super experienced people, like Pat Flynn and Tim Ferriss and others using us. But we've got a lot of beginners who are like, hey, I'd love to start a blog. I'd love to grow from there. So we tried to put a lot of work into retaining those people, because they tend to churn at a higher rate.
For sure. Beginners. Right.
Yep, totally. So a few things that we've tried to do, we've put out a lot of courses and training. We've tried sending personalized videos to every single person who signs up. And that actually had a pretty significant impact. It's a ton of work. And so, we'll see on that experiment. I'm trying to think of the other things. Annual subscriptions make a big difference. I don't know if you can hear my son August in the background. He just woke up from his nap. He's not happy about churn.
No, he's not loving churn. I've got two sleeping here right now, so don't worry. I totally understand. We are. I would say that when in doubt, we may as well have a baby in the back of the podcast. Anyway, it makes it more realistic. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So those are some of the big things. But really, it comes back to product. Product is the biggest thing that matters. Now, for our company, the product is not just the software itself, but it's also the email deliverability. It's how good is the support? If you write into support, does it take 36 hours? And so for us, we've put a ton of effort. Speed matters, the availability. So last summer we rolled out live chat. And then in December, we switched it so it's 24/7 live chat with an average of a 10-second first response time. So if you're stuck, you're working on your, your course launch 10 p.m. on a Friday night.
There's nothing more frustrating than this. And you got a problem and you can't find anyone. It's like, you try to bang your head on the wall. Oh.
Right. And they're like, oh, no, don't worry. We're totally there for you on Monday. And you're like, but I have to be at work on Monday or, or whatever else, or Saturday afternoon. It's like, I'm with the kids or whatever else. And so that time super early or super late, that's when I can carve this out to grow my audience. And so to us, that's part of the product. The support experience is part of that. So that's decreased churn. It's a constant battle in the business, though.
Sure. I mean, it's always going to some of it's always going to happen. I was just curious if you had any kind of parameters, which it sounds like you did, in place, the personalized things and things like that, and extra content that they get as well. Because there's nothing worse than signing up also for something you get nothing else ever, which is not good either. Now, where are you focusing? And this could be marketing, this could be anything in the ConvertKit business. Where would you see your focus being in 2018?
Yeah. So our biggest focus is on the product. We kind of decided, we actually had a whole conversation as a leadership team back in October. And there's a lot of ways that you can grow a business. You can do it through having the best marketing, having the best product, a bunch of other things. And we just decided that we want to win through having the best product. And so that meant, we wrote our budget around that. We hired a bunch more super talented engineers, another designer, and that's where I spend a lot of my focus on is interviewing customers, interviewing potential customers, saying, what do you need? What are you stuck on? And going from there. So that's kind of the focus. That's what we've put a lot of money into. And that's what I'm most excited about.
Okay. Very cool. Now, I love this. I love what I'm about to ask you. Sorry, this is bringing me great entertainment because this is false. I know this is false, but I just want to discuss this for a minute here because, people have been saying that email and email marketing is dead or dying. What would you say to those hellions that are spreading that fire? Are they onto something? Are they off to something? Because, I hear this all the time and I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah. The first thing that came to mind is that you and I are dying as well. It's just going to hopefully take a long time.
That's a great point. I'm going to
hopefully
steal
it'll
that.
be another 40, 50, 60, 70 years.
I'm stealing that one. I'll give you credit, but I'm stealing that.
So I 100% agree that email marketing is dying. I just think that, it's it's dying in the same way that any 32-year-old is dying, something will replace it eventually. But what will always be true is that creators will always want a way to reach their fans directly, not through a record label, not through some massive marketplace, but they want to know, hey, these are my 1,000 true fans. This is who I'm trying to reach. This is who supports me. It's a whole movement that's happened over the last decade in particular. It's happening in every form of creators, whether it's music artists to bloggers to everything else. And so if they do that through email, that's currently the most effective channel. Text message is used a lot. Facebook Messenger is on a little wave right now. We'll see where it goes. All of these things, people will always need a way to get the right message to the right person at the right time. And that's what ConvertKit's built around. Maybe at some point in the future, we'll be adding, who knows, maybe Telegram will be the one that takes off, the platform that dominates. I don't actually think that that'll be the case, but our platform is built around that communication, and actually sending an email is probably 10% of what we do. We could swap it out for other platforms if something else comes up. And so much of the magic of what we do is about growing that audience and then reaching them with the right content at the right time. And so I'm not really worried about that.
Right. And it's funny because I'm going to sound like a broken record to many people in my audience, but too bad. You got to deal with it. Is that because this broken record, people don't listen to this, is that again, email is something that you have control, meaning I can send it's not like going through Facebook. It's not like going through Instagram or anything like that. I mean, we've seen that recently this year with Facebook algorithms, right? This is nothing new. Nathan, nothing new. We've said that from years ago when Facebook fan pages were all the rage. And when Facebook fan pages were all the rage, you would put a post on Facebook and about 98% of your fans would see it. Then Facebook overnight said, 98%, we're going to go a little less. It's going to be about 0.01%. How's that sound?
Right. But here's a boost post button.
Yeah, but here's this. But if you could pay for it, we'll get you some more. Okay. And I remember at the early days of kind of when I was learning about internet marketing and email marketing and things like that. I'm talking 2008, 2009 in that time period. I was at a conference and someone that was teaching Facebook was saying I would trade like 1,000 Facebook fans for 10 email addresses. Okay. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy's on crazy pills. What is wrong with this guy? Until you get it, because again, we don't own Facebook. We don't own YouTube. We don't own iTunes. You could be listening to this on iTunes, but you do at the end of the day own your email list and that direct communication with them. So regardless of what else is going on in this world and what platforms are rising, it's almost like here's old faithful, good old fashioned email. And yes, we can get fancy with it with ConvertKit and do cool stuff. But at the end of the day, its death is, I think, far premature. The obituary is not even starting to be written yet. So Nathan, thank you for sharing that as well. Now, a couple big things here on the way out. We've got a few minutes left here, and I just want to share a couple things. So first of all, Nathan, for those that are on this podcast, the Rise Top listeners, we have put something together special for you guys to try ConvertKit. Now, ConvertKit, do you guys normally have there normally is a free trial, right, Nathan?
We have a 14-day free trial.
14-day. But we have twisted Nathan's arm. We twisted Alexa's arm. We got everybody on this, all right, on our little scheme here. And I said, listen, 14 days, that's great, but I want to do something very, very special for listeners of the Rise to Top, because I had Nathan on a webinar last year in 2017, and people flocked to ConvertKit, absolutely loved it. And it's actually become really what we recommend in my courses and in my programs as well as a great, no confusion soft, no way too simple of something like MailChimp. Here's something that can do what you need to do. So we have gone 30 days free for ConvertKit. So instead of getting a 14-day trial, you're going to get a 30-day trial. You can only get this here on the show. And I want to give the link. It's the risetotop.com/convert30. Okay. So the risetop.com/convert30, and that's the number 30. We'll make sure to put that on the show notes at just like all these links at the risetotop.com/episode 6 with the number 6. Now, one more thing, Nathan, I want to mention here is that we're actually doing a live webinar with one of your special associates here coming up. And I'm very excited about this. And the title of the webinar is the top 10 list building techniques to get your first or next 1,000 subscribers. Okay. Now I just want to tell people about this real quick, Nathan, then I want to hear kind of some more nitty gritty on this. Okay. So the top 10 list building techniques to get your first or next 1,000 subscribers. It's going to be taking place on Thursday, April 12th. So if you're listening after this, you missed it. We'll have some other goodies for you, but Thursday, April 12th, that's going to be happening at 11 a.m. Pacific. So that's 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. And it is, you got to tell us, we've got a special host with this. I will be on there live. Nathan, tell us a little bit about this webinar, because I know this is really your brainchild, and tell us a little about our special host that's going to be joining me as well.
Yeah. So webinars are something that we've done for a while because we love that idea of being able to get out in front of people, show a bunch of examples, and then just provide a lot of great training. So all of our webinars are very educational. We just end up actually pitching, our pitch is free, additional material that we give out. So if you're expecting and now you get sold the super expensive whatever
turbo package for $4,994. No turbo package.
None of that happens in there. The other great thing is, so this webinar is taught by Isa Adney. She's on our content team. She's taught a ton of webinars now. At this point, she's taught way more than I have. And actually, she and Pat Flynn just did a webinar a couple weeks ago in his studio in San Diego. So she's totally an all-star in this space. She's written a few books. She has a background in TV. She's just absolutely incredible. And so I've decided to focus on the product side of things. And then she's just absolutely killing it on the education, showing people how to get the most out of ConvertKit and really how to do the best email marketing overall. Awesome.
So I'm looking forward. We've been emailing back and forth, but we haven't met. So it's going to be really fun to do this on the webinar. So you guys can sign up for this. It's 100% free. You can sign up at the risetotop.com/list training. LIST training. So the risetop.com/list training. It will be 100% live. I will be there on there with Isa. I'm looking forward to that as well. And again, we're going to be kind of giving an overview of email lists, but then how to avoid mistakes people make when trying to build their email list and the top 10 best ways to build an email list of 1,000 true fans, or of course, your next 1,000 subscribers as well. And, I can tell you that this never goes out of style because email list building, Nathan, as you know, like we said, is here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. I love how I just keep thinking about the death thing. It's just bringing me great entertainment. But the thing is, sometimes the tactics and strategies do kind of update, change, things like that, meaning, okay, what's new? What's working now? Because that's very, very important because, email now is a little bit different than it was in 2008. It's a little bit different than it was in 2013. So what I'm very excited about this training is let's talk about what's working now. Let's talk about what's working in 2018. And that's what we're going to have there. So you can check out that link at therisetop.com/list training. All right. So grab that ConvertKit at therisetop.com/ConvertKit30, get that 30-day trial. Check it out, put them to the test. And, Nathan, I'm assuming too, there might be some info there if people need help switching or anything like that. I guess they can reach out somehow if they run into issues. That's all going to be through the support team, right?
Yeah, totally. So we've got that live chat. So if you, whether you sign up super late tonight or, next week or whatever, or, maybe you just want help during normal business hours, we can do that too. Just click the live chat button and you can either send in a ticket or, get help 24/7. So
cool.
The team's there.
Cool. Well, I absolutely love it. So Nathan, thank you so much for coming on. This was super informative. For myself, from a personal level of someone that has an education and a software company, I'm just sitting here just thinking, and I had talked to my partners and I come up with some good questions as well, because I was like, you know what? We're going to obviously steal Nathan's brain for as much as we possibly can here. And also for everyone that listened to this, regardless of whether you have a software company or an online course company and personal brand, which I know you most do, there's insights from every different type of entrepreneur out there. I'm hoping that there could be some crazy moment for you now thinking, oh my God, should I go all in? Or, oh my God, I can't believe Nathan did this or that you can apply to your business. So I hope you enjoy that. And Nathan, thank you for being so upfront, so clear on everything and sharing numbers and all that kind of stuff. And it's been a pleasure having you. And I hope we'll have you back in the future as well.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
All right, my friends. Well, this was Nathan Barry. This was the Rise to Top episode, the new podcast, episode number 6. You can always check out the show notes at therisetop.com/episode 6. We've got the links to the training there. We've got the links to ConvertKit. We even have links to the Baremetrics site. So you can even see how much Nathan is doing right now. Check him out. Make sure he's doing okay. You can check out all their revenue numbers, all that kind of stuff as well. So I will see you next time, my friends. Remember, you can subscribe up in many different ways to the podcast at therisetop.com/subscribe. I'm David Siteman Garland, aka DSG. I'll see you next time. And remember, if you want some fluff, you know what to do. Go pet a bunny.
I'm a beaver. I was it to Daddy. All the way to the top. Bye-bye.